Have you ever made a sacrifice so profound that it felt like giving away a piece of your soul? Imagine working double shifts, skipping meals, and selling the most precious memories you own, all to see your child smile. Now imagine watching that sacrifice destroyed in seconds, while the people responsible laugh in your face. This is the true story of Sarah Mitchell, a single mother from Seattle who learned the hardest way possible that family isn't always defined by blood, and that sometimes the people closest to us can inflict the deepest wounds. What happened next shocked everyone who heard it, and the resolution left an entire community divided. Stay with us until the end, because this story will make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty, boundaries, and justice. Sarah Mitchell had always known what it meant to struggle. At 38 years old, she had spent the last 14 years raising her son, Alex, on her own, after her husband walked out when the boy was just 6 months old. No child support, no phone calls on birthdays. Just Sarah, her nursing scrubs, and an unshakable determination to give her son everything she never had growing up. Their apartment in the Greenwood neighborhood of Seattle was modest. 2 bedrooms, worn hardwood floors that creaked in the hallway, and walls thin enough that you could hear the neighbor's television through the shared living room wall. But it was clean, it was safe, and most importantly, it was theirs. Sarah worked the night shift at Harborview Medical Center, arriving at 10 in the evening and leaving at 7 in the morning, just in time to wake Alex for school. The schedule was brutal. Her back ached constantly from lifting patients, and the dark circles under her eyes had become permanent fixtures. But the pay was slightly better for overnight shifts, and every extra dollar mattered. Alex was everything to her. Unlike most 14-year-old boys who were glued to video games and social media, Alex had developed a genuine passion for photography and videography. He would spend hours watching documentaries about nature photographers, studying their techniques, analyzing how they captured birds in flight or the subtle movements of wildlife. His room was plastered with printed photographs he had taken with his old smartphone, taped to every available inch of wall space. Sunset over Puget Sound, the neighbor's cat mid-yawn, a bee landing on a dandelion in their building's courtyard. When his birthday approached in late June, Sarah asked him what he wanted. She expected him to say a new phone, maybe some video games or concert tickets like other kids his age. Instead, Alex looked at her with those earnest brown eyes and said he wanted a DJI Mavic 3 Pro drone. Sarah's heart sank. She had done her research immediately, pulling out her phone right there at the kitchen table. $2,582 for a toy that flew in the air. She felt her chest tighten with anxiety, that familiar sensation of being completely overwhelmed by financial impossibility. But then Alex showed her. He pulled up videos on his laptop of aerial photographers capturing breathtaking footage. Whales breaching off the Washington coast, the intricate patterns of farmland from above, time-lapses of city lights transitioning from day to night. His hands were shaking with excitement as he explained his dream of becoming a wildlife cinematographer, of maybe one day working for National Geographic or the BBC. Sarah watched her son's face light up in a way she had not seen in years. This was not just a teenage whim. This was genuine passion. This was purpose. That night, after Alex went to bed, Sarah sat alone at her kitchen table under the dim fluorescent light, staring at the small wooden jewelry box her grandmother had left her. Inside were pieces that told the story of 3 generations of women in her family. Her great-grandmother's pearl necklace from 1942, worn at her wedding during World War II. Her grandmother's emerald ring, purchased by her grandfather after his first successful harvest on their farm in eastern Washington. A delicate gold bracelet her mother had given her on her 16th birthday, engraved with tiny flowers. These were not just objects. They were touchstones to the women who had shaped her, who had survived their own struggles, who had taught her resilience. Sarah opened the box and held each piece, tears streaming down her face. She remembered her grandmother's weathered hands clasping that pearl necklace around her neck when she was just a little girl, telling her that strong women do hard things. She remembered her mother's voice explaining that the bracelet was meant to remind her that she was loved, always, no matter what life brought. But what would those women want for her now? Would they want her to hoard memories, or would they want her to give her son a future? The next morning, Sarah took the jewelry to 3 different appraisers in downtown Seattle. The final offer came from a vintage jewelry dealer on First Avenue who recognized the quality and history of the pieces. $3,200. Enough for the drone, the insurance, extra batteries, and still have some left over for Alex's birthday dinner. Sarah signed the paperwork with shaking hands. The dealer carefully placed each piece in individual velvet bags, and Sarah watched them disappear into a safe behind the counter. She walked out onto First Avenue in the morning rain, feeling simultaneously hollow and purposeful. She had just sold her past to invest in her son's future. When Alex's birthday arrived on June 23rd, Sarah had transformed their small living room with streamers and balloons. She had baked his favorite chocolate cake from scratch, despite working a full shift the night before and running on 3 hours of sleep. The drone box sat in the center of the room, wrapped in silver paper. Alex's reaction was everything Sarah had dreamed of. He stared at the box in disbelief, then at his mother, then back at the box. His voice cracked when he asked if it was really for him. When he finally tore open the wrapping paper and saw the DJI logo, he burst into tears, hugging his mother so tightly she could barely breathe. That moment, Sarah thought to herself, was worth every penny, worth every memory she had sold, worth everything, if only she had known what was coming. The invitation had come from Sarah's mother 2 weeks after Alex's birthday. A family barbecue on Saturday, July 15th, at her parents' house in Maple Valley. Nothing fancy, just burgers and hot dogs, a chance for everyone to catch up during the brief Seattle summer when the weather cooperated. Sarah had mixed feelings about these gatherings. Her parents were wonderful, supportive people who had helped her through the divorce and never once made her feel like a failure. But these events also meant dealing with her cousin Jessica. Jessica Reynolds was 41, 3 years older than Sarah, and had made it her life's mission to ensure everyone knew she was doing better than her younger cousin. Jessica had married a software engineer at Microsoft, lived in a sprawling 5-bedroom house in Sammamish with a view of Lake Washington, and drove a pristine white Tesla Model X. Her 3 children, Brandon, Tyler, and Madison, attended expensive private schools and spent their summers at exclusive camps in the San Juan Islands. But beneath the surface of Jessica's perfect life was a deep, corrosive envy. She resented that despite Sarah's struggles, despite raising Alex alone in a cramped apartment, the boy had turned out kind, intelligent, and genuinely good. Meanwhile, Jessica's children, despite every advantage money could buy, were entitled, disrespectful, and increasingly out of control. When Sarah and Alex arrived at her parents' house in Maple Valley that Saturday afternoon, the weather was perfect. Clear blue skies, 78 degrees, the kind of Pacific Northwest summer day that made people forget about the 9 months of grey drizzle. Her father had already fired up the grill, and the smell of charcoal and barbecue sauce filled the air. Her mother had set up picnic tables in the backyard, covered with red and white checkered tablecloths. Alex had brought the drone, carefully packed in its case. He had been flying it almost every weekend since his birthday, waking up at dawn to capture footage of the sunrise over Green Lake, or spending afternoons at Discovery Park, filming the Puget Sound. He had even started a small YouTube channel, posting his videos, slowly building a following of people who appreciated his eye for composition and his gentle narration about the natural world. Sarah's parents were thrilled to see the drone, asking Alex a million questions about how it worked, how far it could fly, how long the battery lasted. Alex patiently explained every feature, his face glowing with pride. This was his passion, and his grandparents genuinely appreciated it. Then Jessica arrived. She pulled up in her Tesla at exactly 2:30, 30 minutes late as usual. Her children tumbled out of the car like a pack of wild animals, immediately making noise and demanding attention. Brandon was 16, tall and lanky, with an expression of permanent boredom on his face. Tyler was 14, Alex's age, but softer around the middle and perpetually attached to his phone. Madison was 12, wearing expensive clothes and too much makeup for a child her age, already displaying the same entitled attitude as her mother. Jessica herself swept into the backyard, wearing designer sunglasses and a flowing white sundress that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. She kissed her aunt and uncle on the cheek, barely acknowledged Sarah with a tight smile, and immediately began talking about her recent vacation to Maui. It did not take long for Jessica's children to notice the drone. Brandon spotted Alex carefully removing it from its case on the patio table, and within seconds, all three of Jessica's children had swarmed around him. Their voices overlapped, loud and demanding. "Can I fly it? How much did that cost? I want a turn first. My dad could buy like 10 of these." Alex, ever patient and kind, smiled and explained that he would be happy to show them how it worked, but they needed to be careful because it was expensive equipment. He demonstrated the controller, showed them the camera feed on his phone, and explained the basic safety rules his mother had made him memorize. Sarah watched from across the yard, feeling that familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. She did not trust Jessica's children. They had a history of breaking things and never facing consequences. Last Christmas, Tyler had spilled an entire glass of red wine on her mother's white carpet, and Jessica had laughed it off, saying, "Boys will be boys." Madison had once deliberately let the family cat out of the house because she thought it would be funny, and the cat had been missing for 3 terrifying days before a neighbor found it. But Alex was so excited to share his passion. He set up the drone in the open area of the backyard, away from the trees and the house. He performed a demonstration flight, sending the drone up about 50 feet, rotating it slowly so everyone could see how stable it was, how smooth the camera movements were. The footage on his phone screen was crystal clear, showing the backyard from above, the neighborhood spreading out in neat rows of houses and trees. Jessica's children were mesmerized, but in a way that made Sarah deeply uncomfortable. It was not appreciation, it was acquisition. They wanted to possess it, to control it, to dominate it. Brandon was the first to ask. Actually, it was not really asking. "Come on, let me try. I play video games all the time. I'll be great at this." Alex hesitated. The controller was still in his hands. He glanced at his mother across the yard, and Sarah gave him a subtle shake of her head. But then Jessica interjected, "Oh, come on, Sarah. Let the kids play together. It's just a toy. Brandon's very responsible." The lie was so blatant that Sarah almost laughed. Responsible was the last word anyone would use to describe Brandon. But Jessica was already walking toward them, and Sarah's mother was giving her that look, the one that pleaded for peace, for family harmony, for just one afternoon without conflict. Sarah hated herself for it, but she nodded. "Just be very careful. Alex, you supervise." Alex handed the controller to Brandon, standing close beside him, ready to take over if anything went wrong. Brandon immediately pushed the joysticks too hard, sending the drone lurching upward and to the right. Alex's hand shot out, steadying the controller, gently guiding Brandon's movements. For about 10 minutes it was fine. Brandon got the hang of basic movements, Tyler took a turn and actually listened to Alex's instructions, and even Madison flew it briefly, giggling when she made it spin in circles. Sarah began to relax slightly, helping her mother bring out bowls of potato salad and coleslaw. But Jessica, as usual, was not paying attention to her children. She was sitting at one of the picnic tables, scrolling through her phone, occasionally laughing at something on her screen. She had no idea what her children were doing, no interest in supervising them, no concern for anyone else's property or feelings. And that is when everything changed. As the afternoon stretched into early evening, Sarah's father announced he was going to light the fire pit. It was a tradition at these gatherings, especially in summer. The large stone fire pit in the corner of the backyard would be filled with wood, and once the sun started to set, they would roast marshmallows and tell stories. It was Alex's favorite part of these family gatherings, the one thing that made dealing with Jessica's family bearable. The fire pit was about 30 feet from where the kids were flying the drone, separated by a stretch of lawn and far enough away that Sarah did not initially worry. Her father carefully arranged the kindling and logs, struck a long match, and within minutes flames were crackling and popping, sending small sparks drifting upward into the early evening air. Alex had taken back control of the drone after Madison's turn, and he was showing them some of the more advanced features: how to program a smooth, circular flight path, how to adjust the camera angle mid-flight, how to track a moving subject. The other kids seemed genuinely interested, asking questions, watching the phone screen, as Alex piloted the drone in elegant patterns above the backyard. But Sarah noticed a shift. Brandon, Tyler and Madison had moved into a tight cluster, whispering to each other and glancing between the drone and the fire pit. There was something in their body language that triggered every maternal alarm in Sarah's body. She set down the platter of corn she was carrying and started walking toward the group of kids. Alex, sensing something, pulled the drone back, bringing it down to about 15 feet, preparing to land it. But Brandon reached out and grabbed the controller from Alex's hands. "Hey!" Alex protested, reaching for it back. "Brandon, I was landing it. You have to be careful." Brandon ignored him, his thumbs already on the joysticks. Tyler and Madison moved closer, and Sarah could hear them now, their voices carrying across the yard. "Do it. Fly it over the fire. I dare you. It'll be hilarious." Sarah broke into a run, but she was too far away. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion and lightning fast all at once. Brandon twisted the controller, and the drone responded instantly. Instead of descending, it shot forward, directly toward the fire pit. Alex lunged for the controller, but Tyler blocked him, shoving him backward. Madison was already laughing, a high-pitched, cruel sound that made Sarah's blood run cold. "No!" Alex's voice cracked with desperation. "Stop! You're going to crash it!" But Brandon was not trying to avoid the fire. He was aiming for it. The drone flew directly over the flames, and for one brief second it seemed like it might make it through unscathed. But then Brandon lowered it, deliberately guiding it down into the heart of the fire. The propellers hit the burning logs first, shattering on impact. The lithium battery made contact with the flames and immediately began to react. There was a bright flash, a loud popping sound, and then thick black smoke erupted from the fire pit. Sparks shot upward like a twisted firework. The expensive camera body melted in seconds, plastic and metal warping and blackening. The smell of burning electronics and chemicals filled the air. And through it all, Brandon, Tyler, and Madison were laughing. Not nervous laughter, not accidental, oops, we made a mistake laughter. This was deliberate, cruel, triumphant laughter. They were proud of what they had just done. The entire backyard fell silent except for those three children's laughter and the crackling of the fire. Sarah reached the group and saw her son standing frozen, his face completely white, staring at the burning remains of his drone. Tears were already streaming down his face, but he was not making a sound. He was in shock. Sarah looked at the fire pit, at the twisted, melted wreckage that had been her son's most prized possession, the drone she had sacrificed her family heirlooms to buy, the tool of his dreams, his passion, his future, destroyed in seconds. And those children were still laughing. Sarah's vision went red. She spun on Brandon, who was now holding the controller loosely in one hand, a smirk on his face. "What did you just do? What did you just do?" Her voice came out as a whisper at first, then a roar. The entire backyard turned to look at her. Her father dropped the bag of marshmallows he was holding. Her mother gasped. Jessica finally looked up from her phone. Brandon shrugged, the smirk still on his face. "It was an accident. We were just messing around." "That was not an accident." Sarah could feel her entire body shaking. "You flew it into the fire on purpose. All three of you were laughing." Jessica stood up from the picnic table, an expression of annoyance on her face, as if Sarah were the one causing a problem. "Oh my God, Sarah, calm down. It's just a drone. It's just a toy. These things happen with kids. Just a toy." Sarah could barely form words. "Do you have any idea what I did to get that drone? Do you have any idea what that cost?" Alex still had not moved. He was staring at the fire, watching his drone burn, and Sarah could see his heart breaking in real time. She moved to him, wrapping her arm around his shoulders, and felt him trembling. Jessica rolled her eyes. "Look, I'm sorry it broke. But Brandon said it was an accident. Kids make mistakes. You can't expect them to be perfect. This was not a mistake." Sarah's voice was deadly calm now. "I heard them. They dared him to do it. They thought it would be funny, and now they're laughing about it." Jessica looked at her children, who had finally stopped laughing but showed no remorse on their faces. "Is that true, Brandon?" Brandon shrugged again. "We were just joking around. We didn't think it would actually catch on fire like that. See?" Jessica turned back to Sarah. "They didn't mean for it to burn. It was just kid stuff that got out of hand." "Kid stuff?" Sarah felt something break inside her. "That drone cost $2,582, Jessica. I sold my grandmother's jewelry collection to buy it. The pearls from Great-Grandma Rose, the emerald ring from Grandma Catherine, the gold bracelet Mom gave me. I sold them all to give my son something that meant the world to him, and your children destroyed it for entertainment." The backyard went completely silent. Even Jessica seemed to falter for a moment, her expression flickering with something that might have been guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by defensiveness. "Well, I didn't know that. That was your choice to spend that much money on a toy. And honestly, you can't put that kind of price tag on something and then let kids play with it. That's on you, Sarah." Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. "You're not going to apologize? You're not going to make them apologize? You're not going to pay to replace it?" Jessica crossed her arms. "I'm not paying for an accident, and I'm certainly not paying $2,500. That's ridiculous. Get insurance or something. That's not my responsibility. Your children destroyed my son's property deliberately. I'm not asking, Jessica. I'm telling you, you're going to replace it." Jessica laughed. Actually laughed. "I'm not giving you a dime, Sarah. You want to blame someone. Blame yourself for buying something that expensive for a kid. Come on, kids, we're leaving." Brandon, Tyler, and Madison followed their mother toward the house without a backward glance. No apology, no acknowledgement, nothing. Jessica paused at the gate, turned back, and said, "Maybe next time you'll think twice before showing off expensive things at family gatherings. It just makes everyone uncomfortable." And then she was gone. Sarah stood in the middle of her parents' backyard, holding her sobbing son, staring at the remains of the drone still burning in the fire pit. Her parents approached cautiously, her mother with tears in her eyes, her father looking angrier than Sarah had ever seen him. "I'll talk to her," her father said quietly. "I'll make this right." But Sarah knew better. Jessica had never taken responsibility for anything in her life. This would be no different. As the sun set over Maple Valley that night, Sarah made a decision. Her cousin had just taught her children that cruelty had no consequences, that other people's feelings and property meant nothing, that wealth and family connections could shield them from accountability. Sarah was about to teach them a very different lesson. The days following the barbecue disaster were some of the darkest Sarah and Alex had experienced. The physical loss of the drone was devastating enough, but the emotional weight of what had happened was even worse. Alex barely spoke for 3 days. He went to his room immediately after they got home that night and did not come out except to use the bathroom. Sarah would stand outside his door, listening to him cry, feeling her own heart shatter over and over. She tried everything. She knocked gently, offered his favorite foods, promised they would figure something out. But Alex was inconsolable. This was not just about the drone. This was about the violation of trust, the cruelty of people he had thought were family, the destruction of something he had built his dreams around. On Monday morning, Sarah called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. She could not leave Alex like this. She sat on the edge of his bed and finally got him to talk. "Mom, why did they do that?" His voice was hollow. "I was sharing something I loved with them. I was trying to be nice. Why would they destroy it on purpose?" Sarah had no good answer. Because some people are cruel. Because some parents don't teach their children to respect others. Because your cousin Jessica raised entitled monsters and refuses to hold them accountable. But she did not say any of that. Instead, she held her son and promised him that this would not stand, that there would be consequences, that justice existed even when it seemed impossible. That same Monday, Sarah called her father. He had already tried talking to Jessica 3 times since Saturday. Each conversation had ended the same way. Jessica refused to accept responsibility, claimed her children had done nothing wrong, accused Sarah of overreacting and trying to extort money from her. She had even had the audacity to suggest that Sarah was jealous of her success and was using this incident to try to humiliate her. Sarah's father was furious, but felt powerless. "What can I do? She's my niece. I can't force her to do the right thing, but Sarah could." She spent Monday afternoon researching. She looked up small claims court procedures in Washington state. She photographed the remains of the drone, which she had taken home from the barbecue in a plastic bag. She pulled out the receipt from the purchase, the appraisal documents from the jewelry she had sold, and her bank statements showing the exact transactions. She found the YouTube videos Alex had posted using the drone, evidence of its condition, and his skill in using it. She also did something else. She reached out to other family members who had been at the barbecue. Her parents, her Uncle Tom, her Aunt Linda. She asked if they would be willing to provide written statements about what they had witnessed. To her relief and gratitude, they all agreed. They had seen what happened. They had heard the children laughing. They knew it was deliberate. On Tuesday morning, Sarah went to the King County Courthouse in Seattle and filed a small claims lawsuit against Jessica Reynolds for $2,582. The filing fee was $53 that Sarah could barely afford, but she paid it without hesitation. When Jessica received the court summons at her Sammamish house 3 days later, she called Sarah immediately, her voice shaking with rage. "You're suing me? Are you insane? Over a stupid drone?" Sarah's voice was perfectly calm. "You had the opportunity to do the right thing. You chose not to. Now the court will decide. This is ridiculous." Jessica was practically screaming now. "I'm your family. You don't sue family over accidents. It was not an accident, and you know it." Sarah felt oddly detached from the conversation, like she was watching herself from outside her own body. "Your children deliberately destroyed property that cost me thousands of dollars. Property I sacrificed irreplaceable family heirlooms to purchase. And you laughed in my face when I asked you to take responsibility. So yes, Jessica, I'm suing you. See you in court." She hung up before Jessica could respond. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Jessica launched a family-wide campaign to paint Sarah as vindictive and money-hungry. She sent group text messages to relatives, claiming Sarah was trying to ruin her life over an accident. She posted vague messages on Facebook about toxic family members and false accusations. She even tried to turn Sarah's own mother against her, calling multiple times to play the victim. But Sarah's parents stood firm. They had been there. They had seen what happened. They refused to be manipulated. Jessica also made several attempts to settle outside of court, but her offers were insulting. She started at $500, then went to $1,000, each time acting like she was being incredibly generous. Sarah refused every offer. It was not about the money anymore. It was about teaching her son that standing up for yourself mattered, that allowing people to hurt you without consequences only encouraged them to hurt others. Alex slowly began to recover. Sarah showed him everything she was doing, explained the court process, let him read the witness statements from his grandparents and great-aunt and great-uncle. He saw that people were standing up for him, that his pain mattered, that justice was possible. On the morning of August 10th, Sarah and Alex walked into the King County Small Claims Court together. Sarah wore her best professional clothes, a simple navy dress and modest jewelry. Alex wore khakis and a button-down shirt his grandmother had bought him. They both looked nervous but determined. Jessica arrived 15 minutes late with her husband Michael, looking irritated and put out. She wore an expensive pantsuit and carried a designer purse. She had not brought a lawyer because in small claims court in Washington, lawyers were not allowed. She was going to have to defend herself. The courtroom was small and functional, nothing like the dramatic courtroom Sarah had seen on television. There were only a few wooden benches, a judge's desk at the front, and simple fluorescent lighting. Judge Patricia Hendricks, a woman in her early 60s with short grey hair and sharp eyes, sat reviewing the case file as people filed in. When their case was called, both parties approached the front. Judge Hendricks looked over her reading glasses at them and asked Sarah to present her case first. Sarah spoke clearly and calmly. She explained the purchase of the drone, showing the receipt. She explained how she had paid for it, presenting the jewelry appraisal documents and bank records showing the sale. She described the barbecue incident in detail, her voice never wavering even when describing her son's heartbreak. She presented written witness statements from 4 family members who had all seen the same thing. She showed the judge photos of the destroyed drone. And finally, she showed the judge Alex's YouTube channel, videos her son had made with the drone, evidence of his care and skill. The judge watched one of the videos, a 3-minute piece about eagles at Discovery Park that Alex had edited with gentle narration. When it finished, she looked at Alex. "You made this?" "Yes, Your Honor," Alex said quietly. "It's quite good." "Thank you." Judge Hendricks turned to Jessica. "Your turn to present your defense." Jessica immediately went on the offensive. "This is completely blown out of proportion. My children are kids. Kids make mistakes. My son Brandon was trying to fly the drone, and it accidentally went into the fire. Children don't have the same judgment as adults. This is not intentional destruction of property. This is an accident, and frankly, I think my cousin is trying to exploit this situation because she's always been jealous of my family's success." Sarah felt her blood pressure rising, but she forced herself to remain calm. Judge Hendricks looked unimpressed. "Miss Reynolds, I have 4 witness statements that say the children were laughing before, during, and after the drone was destroyed, that they dared each other to fly it into the fire, that they blocked the owner from regaining control of the device. That does not sound like an accident to me. Children laugh when they're nervous." Jessica's voice was getting higher, more defensive. "And kids say stupid things. That doesn't mean they intended to destroy anything. You were present at this event, correct?" "Yes, but Were you supervising your children?" "I was nearby. That's not what I asked." Were you actively supervising your children while they were using someone else's very expensive equipment? Jessica hesitated. I was giving them space to interact with their cousin. I was trusting them to be responsible. And when the drone was destroyed, what was your response? Another hesitation. I told Sarah that accidents happen, that it was unreasonable to bring such expensive equipment around children and then be upset when something happened to it. Judge Hendricks leaned back in her chair, her expression hardening. Ms. Reynolds, did you at any point offer to replace the destroyed property? No, because did you discipline your children for their actions? I didn't feel discipline was warranted for an accident. Did you apologize to Ms. Mitchell or her son? Jessica's face flushed red. I don't think I had anything to apologize for. The judge was silent for a long moment, and Sarah could feel the tension in the courtroom. Finally, Judge Hendricks spoke, and her tone was ice-cold. Ms. Reynolds, I have been presiding over small claims cases for 17 years. I have seen every excuse, every justification, every attempt to avoid responsibility. What I have not often seen is this level of callous disregard for the consequences of one's children's actions. The evidence is overwhelming that your children deliberately destroyed property belonging to your cousin's son. The witness statements are consistent and credible. The financial documentation is thorough, and your complete refusal to take any responsibility is, frankly, appalling. Jessica opened her mouth to protest, but the judge raised a hand to stop her. This young man saved and sacrificed to purchase equipment for his passion. His mother sold irreplaceable family heirlooms to make his dream possible. Your children destroyed that in seconds, apparently for their own amusement. And rather than teaching them about accountability, respect for others' property, and basic human decency, you have modeled for them that wealth and family connections can insulate them from the consequences of their cruelty. That is not just poor parenting, Ms. Reynolds. That is actively harmful to your children's moral development. The courtroom was silent, except for Jessica's sharp intake of breath. Judgment for the plaintiff. Ms. Reynolds, you are ordered to pay Ms. Mitchell the full amount of $2,582 for the destroyed drone, plus court costs of $53. Total judgment, $2,635. You have 30 days to pay. If you fail to pay within that time frame, Ms. Mitchell may pursue wage garnishment. Do you understand? Jessica looked like she had been slapped. Her face was scarlet. Her husband, Michael, looked mortified. This is outrageous. I'm going to... You have the right to appeal, Ms. Reynolds, but I suggest you save your money and your time. This judgment is sound, and no appeals court will overturn it based on the evidence presented here. Court is adjourned. The judge stood, and everyone in the courtroom rose as she exited. Sarah felt like her legs might give out. Alex was crying, but this time they were tears of relief. Her father, who had been sitting in the back row, approached and hugged them both. Jessica stormed out of the courtroom without a word, Michael trailing behind her, already on his phone, presumably calling someone to vent to. Sarah and Alex walked out of the King County Courthouse into the bright August sunshine. It felt like the first time Sarah had taken a full breath in weeks. Justice, it turned out, was possible after all. The check arrived 28 days later, 2 days before the 30-day deadline. It was delivered by certified mail, requiring Sarah's signature. The envelope was plain white, no return address beyond Jessica's name. Inside was a cashier's check for exactly $2,635. No note, no apology, just the money and nothing more. Sarah stood in her apartment hallway, holding the check, feeling a complicated mix of emotions, vindication, sadness, anger that it had come to this, relief that it was over. She showed the check to Alex, whose reaction was more measured than she expected. He looked at it for a long moment, then said, "Does this mean I can get a new drone?" Sarah smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, baby. This means you can get a new drone. They went to the camera store that weekend, the same one where Sarah had originally purchased the DJI Mavic 3 Pro. The sales associate remembered them and was shocked to hear what had happened. He gave them a small discount on the replacement unit and threw in an extra battery free of charge. When Alex held the new drone, carefully removing it from its packaging at home, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that made Sarah's heart ache. "This one is just as nice, but it doesn't feel the same as the one you bought me with Grandma's jewelry." Sarah sat down beside him on the couch. "I know, sweetheart, but you know what? I think Grandma Catherine would be proud of how we handled this. We stood up for ourselves. We didn't let someone hurt us and get away with it. That's a different kind of valuable lesson." Alex nodded slowly. "I just wish it hadn't happened at all." "Me too, baby. Me too." But something good came from the experience, as dark as it had been. Alex's YouTube channel began to grow. The story had leaked somehow, probably through extended family members, and people started watching his videos not just because they were beautiful, but because they knew the story behind them. They knew this was a kid who had fought for his passion, who had a mother who would go to war for him. By October, Alex had gained over 15,000 subscribers. People left comments sharing their own stories of family betrayal, of standing up for themselves, of parents who had sacrificed everything for their children's dreams. The videos themselves were technically excellent. Alex had a natural eye for composition, and his narration had a gentle educational quality that reminded viewers of the nature documentaries they had grown up watching. A local news station in Seattle picked up the story in early November. They interviewed Sarah and Alex, filmed footage of Alex operating his new drone at Golden Gardens Park, and ran a 3-minute segment during the evening news about sacrifice, justice, and the importance of teaching children accountability. The segment went viral locally, and several people reached out to Sarah privately to share that they had been inspired to stand up to toxic family members in their own lives. But the most significant change was in Alex himself. The experience had matured him in ways Sarah had not anticipated. He was more cautious now, more aware that not everyone had good intentions. But he was also more confident. He had watched his mother fight for him in a real courtroom. He had seen that standing up to bullies, even when they were family, was possible. He had learned that his dreams were worth protecting. As for Jessica, the fallout on her end was severe in ways Sarah had not expected. Word of the lawsuit and the judge's scathing remarks spread through their extended family and Jessica's social circles. Several family members quietly stopped inviting Jessica to events, tired of her inability to take responsibility for anything. Her own children began facing consequences at their expensive private school when word got around about what they had done. Parents did not want their children associating with kids who destroyed others' property for fun. Jessica made one final attempt to reach out to Sarah in December, 7 months after the barbecue incident. She sent a text message at 11 at night. "We're family. We shouldn't let this define our relationship. Can we move past this?" Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Part of her, the part that had been raised to value family above all else, wanted to forgive, wanted to say yes, we can move forward. But then she thought about her son's face when he watched his drone burn. She thought about Jessica's children laughing. She thought about Jessica's refusal to apologize, her attempts to paint Sarah as the villain, her complete lack of remorse, even in the courtroom. Sarah typed back a single sentence: "We can move past this when you take genuine responsibility for what your children did and teach them that actions have consequences. Until then, we have nothing to discuss." Jessica never responded. Sarah's relationship with her parents remained strong. They had stood by her throughout the ordeal, refusing to enable Jessica's behavior. Her father had even stopped speaking to Jessica entirely after the court case, telling her that he was ashamed of the person she had become. It was harsh, but it was honest. Christmas that year was different. It was just Sarah, Alex and her parents. Smaller, quieter, but also warmer, more genuine, free from the tension that Jessica's presence always brought. They watched Alex's latest drone video on the big screen TV, a stunning piece about snow falling on the Cascade Mountains, and Sarah felt a peace she had not experienced in years. On New Year's Eve, as midnight approached, Sarah and Alex stood on the balcony of their small apartment, watching fireworks explode over downtown Seattle in the distance. Alex had his new drone hovering safely nearby, capturing footage of the celebration. The cold December air bit at their faces, but neither of them wanted to go inside. "Mom," Alex said quietly, not taking his eyes off the drone's controller screen. "Thank you for what you did, for taking her to court, for fighting for me." Sarah wrapped her arm around her son's shoulders. "Always, baby. I will always fight for you. Do you ever regret selling Grandma's jewelry?" he asked. "Like, really? Because if you do, I would understand." Sarah thought about it honestly, not even a little bit. Those pieces were beautiful and they held memories. But you know what holds even more memory? Watching you discover your passion, seeing you create something beautiful, standing beside you in that courtroom and watching you learn that you matter, that your dreams matter, that people who hurt you don't get to walk away without consequences. That's worth more than any piece of jewelry could ever be. Alex leaned into his mother's side, and they stood there together in the cold Seattle night, watching the city celebrate the new year. The drone hovered steadily above them, its camera capturing the moment. A mother and son who had survived betrayal and come out stronger. A family of two who had learned that sometimes the people you choose to keep in your life matter more than the people you're related to by blood. And somewhere in Sammamish, in a 5-bedroom house with a view of Lake Washington, Jessica Reynolds sat alone in her living room, scrolling through social media, seeing post after post from family members celebrating together. Celebrations she had not been invited to, a family that had decided they were better off without her toxic influence. She had chosen pride over accountability. She had chosen her ego over her family. And now she was learning too late that actions have consequences. Even for people who think they're above them. Sarah never spoke to Jessica again. Years later, when Alex graduated high school with honors and received a full scholarship to film school in Los Angeles, Sarah's parents attended the ceremony. Jessica was not invited. When Alex's first professional documentary aired on a major streaming platform 5 years after that, featuring his journey from a kid with a dream to a working cinematographer, he dedicated it to his mother, to the woman who sold her past to invest in his future, to the woman who taught him that standing up for yourself is not optional, it is essential. The dedication read simply, "For Mom, who showed me that love means fighting for what matters, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard." Sarah watched that dedication appear on screen from her small apartment in Seattle, tears streaming down her face, and knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. Every single one. This is more than a story about a destroyed drone. This is a story about what we teach our children through our actions. Jessica taught her children that wealth can insulate them from consequences, that other people's feelings do not matter, and that cruelty can be disguised as humor. Sarah taught her son something entirely different. She taught him that sacrifice is an expression of love. She taught him that standing up for yourself is not vindictive, it is necessary. She taught him that justice may not be easy or comfortable, but it is always worth pursuing. The question this story poses to all of us is simple but profound. When someone hurts you or someone you love, especially when that person is family, what do you do? Do you accept it for the sake of peace? Do you enable bad behavior because confrontation is uncomfortable? Or do you stand up, set boundaries, and demand accountability, even when it costs you relationships? Sarah chose the harder path. She chose to fight. And in doing so, she gave her son the greatest gift any parent can give, the knowledge that he is worth fighting for. So we want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where a family member destroyed something precious to you? How did you handle it? Do you think Sarah did the right thing by taking Jessica to court? Or should she have let it go? Would you have done the same, or would you have chosen differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is facing a similar situation right now. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own family dynamics and boundaries, please consider subscribing to our channel. We share real stories about real people facing difficult situations, and we believe that by sharing these experiences, we can all learn and grow together. And before you go, make sure to watch the next video we have recommended for you. It is another powerful story about family conflict, justice, and the moment someone finally said, "Enough is enough." Trust us, you will not want to miss it. Thank you for watching. And remember, your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It is determined by how you stand up for yourself when others treat you poorly. Stay strong, set your boundaries, and never apologize for protecting what matters most.